Acting Dean of the Faculty of Education and Liberal Studies, Dr. Harold McDermott. Head of School, Dr. Warwick Latibodere. Director of the Language Teaching and Research Center, Dr. Deidre Telfo. Specially invited guests, panelists, lecturers, students, and our online viewers, good afternoon. I am your Master of Ceremonies, Omari Wilson, and I want to welcome you all to the 2024 staging of the Issues in Language Forum. The Issues in Language Forum is an event hosted by the Language Teaching and Research Center. The LTRC is a unit in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences in the Faculty of Education and Liberal Studies. The forum is geared towards providing language education and language-related solutions to Youth at Jamaica clients and the wider community. This year's staging of the forum is a panel discussion focusing on the topic, Artificial Intelligence in Foreign Language Education, Adapting for the Next Generation. To officially welcome you all to this year's forum is Dr. Deidre Telfo, the Director of the Language Teaching and Research Center. Please make her welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. It was Wittgenstein who said, "The limits of my language are the limits of my world." And I think that this quote highlights the profound impact that language has on our understanding and perception of the world around us, and the importance of language in our daily lives, and also why it's important for us to prepare our students by expanding their experiences and the boundaries of their language. So we have to be open to and embrace the things that we have at our disposal to allow our students to face a world with limitless possibilities. So good afternoon, everyone. And I wish to welcome you all, both in the lecture theater as well as those online, to this year's Issues in Language Forum, and by extension to the Language Teaching and Research Center and the University of the West Indies, Jamaica. I am quite thrilled to see those of you we have here, and we have a larger complement online, so I'm very grateful to you for choosing to share your afternoon with us today. This forum holds a special place in the university's history, as Dr. Lewis reminded me the other day. It's now 10 years since the inception of the forum, and it started with him through an experience in his one of his BACAT classes. I don't quite remember the class, writing workshop 4, I think, right? When a student took him to task for using Creole in the classroom. And it's something that he does on a regular basis, so some of his students would have been used to it. So they basically defended him by attacking, and I'm losing the word loosely, the student. And, the then head of school, Dr. Nova Gordon-Bell, encouraged him to embrace this kind of discussion and activities, and there came the birth of Issues in Language. And the first one that happened included the student who had an issue with Creole and other students as well. And hey, I was on that panel as well. So it has great significance for us, and we thank Dr. Lewis for pioneering in that activity. Now, the thought of AI in education brings both excitement and fear, and opens countless opportunities, but with those opportunities come a sense of wariness, about what other things that are also possible. But today's discussion, which promises to be both thought-provoking and forward-looking, requires us to embrace the rapid advancements in artificial intelligence and its potential to revolutionize language learning. It's very crucial for us to adapt and prepare for the next generation. Our students have to be prepared, not only the students, but the educators as well. And so I wish to especially welcome our Dean. Let me start with our acting Dean, Dr. Harold McDermott. Thank you, sir. Our head of school, Dr. Latibodere, our distinguished guests, our panelists here. I will not call you by name because that will come later in the session, but it does not mean that I am not very happy that you agreed to share with us this evening. Dr. Lewis, our moderator, our MC, our specially invited guests, colleagues, students, members of our wider community, I want to specially welcome you this evening. I know I cannot wait to hear the insights and perspectives from our esteemed panelists as they share their experiences and expertise on the topic, and I am sure that you are just as eager. So in ending, I want to share this quote with you and invite you, along with the rest of us here, to open your minds to what will be shared today as we engage in the discussion. And the quote goes, "The future belongs to the curious, the ones who are not afraid to try it, explore it, poke at it, question it, and turn it upside down." So let us do that this afternoon as we explore AI in foreign language education. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Telfel, and I hope everyone is feeling welcome this afternoon. We'll now invite the Acting Dean of the Faculty of Education and Liberal Studies, Dr. Harold McDermott, followed by the Head of School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Dr. Warwick Latibodere, to bring greetings.
Thank you. A pleasant good afternoon, everyone, those inside the hall and those who are online. It is my signal honor this afternoon to welcome all to this very, very important function, 10 years and going. It is significant that this is an initiative from the LTRC, and under the guidance of Dr. Telfer, I have seen that this section of our faculty has been growing leaps and bounds. The topic this afternoon, LTRC in language, let me get it right, language education, is very, very appropriate. And I say because AI has become a buzzword these days, and everybody speaks about it. The fact is that recently I heard one member of the public commenting on AI, and she said, now that there is AI, women don't need men. I do not know if our panelists will engage that part of the discussion this afternoon, but I think as we engage, we realize that AI has the potential to enhance our lives, enhance what we do as educators, but it also has simultaneously the potential to upend and unsettle our lives. So I want to welcome everyone this afternoon to this function. I especially welcome our panel of distinguished persons, with one celebrity at the end of the table down there. She knows what I'm talking about. And I'm looking forward to the engagement, and I'm sure all of us are going to be benefited by this. So once again, thank you all for coming. To our audience, hold on tight because this is going to be good. All right? Thanks very much. I hand you back to, Dr. Latibodier.
Dr. McDermott, your statement on the AI and women, I'm sure the panelists, they won't say aye to that. Thanks, Mr. Omari Wilson, Master of Ceremonies, Dr. Harold McDermott, Dean Acting, Faculty of Education and Liberal Studies, Dr. Deidre Telfer, Director, Language Teaching and Research Center, Dr. Ron Lewis, Moderator, distinguished panelists, Mrs. Ramona Smith-Hamilton, Mr. O'Neill Madden, Miss Antoinette Royal, Mrs. Michelle Stewart McCoy, Mr. Christopher Record, Miss Ashley Deans, Miss Ashana Douglas. Invited guests in person and online. Bon après-midi, buenas tardes, konnichiwa. It was philologist Friedrich Max Muller who stated, "He who knows one religion knows not his own." Within that lies the underbelly that religions borrow from religions. Religion, like so many other things, is operationalized by language. And indeed, to rework the phrasing, he who knows one language knows not his own. For languages intermingle, take from each other. The School of Humanities and Social Sciences, with the LTRC as the language arm, prides itself in being the hub for the university's language needs, be it a foreign language or Jamaican, as the vernacular is called. Language is at the center of our lives and has long been accorded creative potential, for in the beginning was the Word, and the Logos, the Word, was God. But the reverse becomes very interesting, as language was seen as the creator or that which drives things into being, such as technology. But the reverse now is this, that technology is driving language. And we in the SHSS are deeply interested in where AI is taking foreign languages. Hence the theme, artificial intelligence in foreign language education, adapting for the next generation. Who would not want to pay keen interest to such a topic, as this has implications for learning and even job security, as we're not sure how many jobs will be lost due to AI. Let us see how this discussion unfolds. From the School of Humanities and Social Sciences as head, it's a privilege to bring greetings.
Thank you, Dr. McDermott and Dr. Latibodier. The panelists for today's discussion are Mr. O'Neill Madden, a part-time lecturer here at UTEC Jamaica. He's a passionate multilingual educator who lectures courses in English, French, and Spanish, both locally and internationally. Ms. Ashana Douglas, a second-year chemical engineering student here at UTEC Jamaica. As part of her program, she has to study Spanish for engineers. Ms. Antoinette Royal, the head of Department for Modern Languages and teacher of Spanish at Arden High. Ms. Royal also have training internally and externally in online courses using technology, AI, and gamification in the teaching and learning processes and e-testing for assessment. Mrs. Ramona Smith-Hamilton is an educator who is the current education officer of Spanish at the Ministry of Education and Youth. Ms. Ashley Deans, a final year computer science student who is deeply passionate about technology and language learning, particularly Japanese. Throughout her academic career, she has been captivated by the potential of technology to transform traditional educational paradigms and enrich learning experiences. Mr. Christopher Record is a technology entrepreneur who serves on a number of boards and communities for businesses and the government of Jamaica, including the recently formed National Artificial Intelligence Task Force, where he serves as chairman, and also the Data Protection Oversight Committee, where he also serves as chairman. Mrs. Michelle Stewart McCoy. She is the faculty or educational developer with responsibility for educational technologies in the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning on the University of the West Indies Mona campus. Mrs. McCoy is also a trained language educator. Mrs. Stephanie Anderson Chong, who was to be on this panel, unfortunately is not able to be here with us today. Our afternoon's moderator for our panel discussion is Dr. Rohan Anthony Lewis. He is an associate professor of language, culture, and society in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at the University of Technology, Jamaica, where he teaches media writing, speech, and culture. Please put your hands together and make welcome Dr. Lewis and our esteemed panelists.
Thanks, Mr. Wilson. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me. Buenas tardes. Bonjour. Bon après-midi. I don't know any others. Buongiorno, Italiano. So our guests have been introduced, a distinguished panel of educators and students. Because we have so many people on this panel, I won't go into a lot of preamble. I'll simply get into the questions, so be ready. Just to mention, we have Mr. Madden to my right. I won't start with him, though. I'll start with the big wig, if we want to call it that, in the middle. Mrs. Ramonia Smith-Hamilton from the Ministry of Education. And given where all of this is going, Mrs. Smith-Hamilton, the fact that AI has become one of the new features of the environment, from the ministry's perspective, do you see this affecting the teaching of foreign languages in schools? Given the fact that we have automatic translators, everybody is using the technology to speak everything. How does this affect the teaching of foreign languages in the schools?
Yes. Good afternoon, Dr. Lewis, fellow panelists, and good afternoon to our audience here in the lecture theater and also online. I want to respond quickly to that by providing an overarching statement of the Ministry of Education's position or view on the use of artificial intelligence in not just in the foreign languages classrooms, but in general in education. And the ministry recognizes artificial intelligence, or AI, as a transformative force in revolutionizing our education system to empower our students or learners and also our teachers to thrive in this digital era. We are living in a digital era, and against this background, with the emergence of more and more AI tools, it means that the teaching and learning of Spanish will have to be revolutionized as well. In terms of the access to these tools, it is important to recognize that how we teach, how we also assess will have to be transformed, because all the students have access to these tools. They have access to the information that is there. And we, at the same time, as foreign language educators, would want for them to develop the skills, the same linguistic skills of listening, speaking, reading, writing, intercultural competence as well. It means that how we use the tools to assess and also to teach will have to change and to shift in order to still adequately assess those tools, those skills. And therefore, I have to mention, if we're talking about the Ministry of Education's position, it is important to mention our Information and Communication Technologies, or ICTs, in education policy. And our ICT in education policy does recognize the importance of integrating ICT tools in the foreign language classroom, in education in general, to meet these demands of our 21st century learners. And because we have to prepare our same students for this globally changing environment, then we embrace AI among other digital tools and resources. And so we would want to equip our teachers with strategies to use the AI tools effectively in the teaching and learning environment. And that is where training and capacity development comes in terms of the use of the AI tools, in terms for lesson planning, for lesson development, for resource development as well. And also, we have to consider competencies such as prompt engineering, how to use prompts to generate the content that we need, whether for lessons or otherwise. And also, we cannot deny the ethical considerations as educators for both teachers and students that we have to bear in mind as we use AI tools. I will elaborate some more on this as the
wonderful.
Discussion
It's a good place to bring in Mr. Record, the question of ethics in the context of AI. Given your role, Mr. Record, want to ask about the business of foreign language education in relation to AI. And of course, you were asked to prepare a little presentation to go along with the response. We could go there. Just press the button, and when you see green,
can you imagine I used to be a sound system DJ while I was actually here. So firstly, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for making the link. I'm happy to be back where I started. So I'm actually a student of Tech Ed department, which is now the Faculty of
Education and Liberal Studies.
So so when I got to the security, I'm like, where's LT50? That wasn't here when I was here. Anyway, I found it. After becoming a teacher and then realizing that, be careful. Okay, let me change what I was going to say. After becoming a teacher and then deciding to be curious and then evolve into the IT space, I'm a person of multiple passions. Some may say that I'm not focused, and because of my ADHD and all these things that I discovered later on, maybe some of the reasons. No, I end up in the wine world. So by day, I'm a teacher. By night, I'm whining.
Oh Lord!
And then eventually, sipping, sniffing, tasting, and then eventually, I really end up in the wine world, and I started a wine business and all of that. Now, because of that, I end up going to France every other year, right? So my first time when I was going to France, I said, but I have to learn the language, at least the basic, comment ça va, ça va bien, and just absolute basics. So what did I do? I turned to technology, right? At the time, the applications that I used at the time, Rosetta Stone, but it knows, you guys in the language, you must, And then, of course, years after Rosetta Stone was Duolingo. And of course, whilst we use the term AI generally right now as an umbrella terminology, way before AI was machine learning, right? So AI is, as those of us who study AI know, it's 70 plus years old. I mean, AI is a mature adult, right? Generative AI is brand new, over the last five or so years. So as I was preparing and having some ideas as to what I was going to say here, I said, I need to share the fact that I did use technology to get, 6 months before I was going, I started. So in the mornings, it's my neighbor, by the way, she sees me coming around the neighborhood all the time, and I have my headphones on. I'm either listening to an audiobook, or way back then, I was actually learning a language while I was exercising, right? So it's, trying to get down the belly, because I'm going to France to big up the belly, right? Anyway, so at the end of the day, I have seen where that technology has improved exponentially, right? Last week, I attended an event virtually in California, put on by an organization associated with an education company called Singularity University. And one of the presenters from Google showed a film, and I was blown away, and I was hoping that I could actually come here and link it and show it, but we'll try that at a different time. Where they're now using their Google Glass. I remember they came out with this glass technology. Google Glass put on, but what it is, when I saw it, I was like, no, this is a game changer. Where the glass, Google Glass, looking at a deaf subject using sign language and able to translate the sign language. So all of a sudden, two people could now communicate, and that's a sign language. The other, same example, using the same technology, again, heavily AI-based, was a mother who's from Japan speaking to her daughter who's from America, and she's speaking in English, and in the glasses, she's seeing everything translated, and also can hear it translated, all happening real time, and that technology is available right now, right? So, against that backdrop, I think there's going to be change. There's going to be massive change. Remember, when the motor car came around, all the horse and buggy operators were up in arms. This thing is useless, it's never going to happen. We know the history of that one. So, against that backdrop, I also put together a paper and I submitted to the minister. It is a development. I've shared it with a few people. I just read my project title. Transforming Education in Jamaica and the Caribbean through AI-powered personalization. My problem statement: the traditional one-size-fits-all model of education is not keeping pace with the rapid evolving demands of the 21st century. Students in Jamaica and the Caribbean require an education system that is personalized, adaptive, and future-oriented to adequately prepare them for the world marked by AI, robotics, rapid technological advancement. My proposed solution: develop an AI system that personalizes education for every student in Jamaica and the Caribbean, revolutionizing how lessons are taught, learned, and assessed. This AI will provide each student, right, with their own personalized lesson plans, ongoing assessments, adapting to their unique learning styles, pace, and areas of interest. So I'll leave it there. I don't want to take up too much of time.
Yeah,
but that's my starting thought. I wrote that about a year ago, and I've submitted my one-pager to everyone who would listen. So maybe we can partner with UTech and build it. I don't know.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
that's my high-level key components of this: AI-based personalized lesson plans, comprehensive database of curriculum and educational resources, partnerships with schools and educational institutions, user-friendly interface accessible to students, teachers, and parents, and a robust teacher training program. So
Right.
that's my little start.
Well,
Thank you.
the right people are here listening. The acting dean, the ministry is here, so the right people are here. I think it's a nice segue to move to Mrs. Michelle Stewart McCoy, who has been an expert, who is an expert in learning technologies and applying those to foreign languages in particular. So, Mrs. Stewart McCoy, you've heard about the plans in relation to, and the possibilities in relation to foreign languages and artificial intelligence. So tell us something now about the ways in which we can harness the technology generally, globally, for language education.
That has nothing to do with what I prepared. Good afternoon, colleagues.
Good afternoon.
I think before we can start thinking about harvesting different tools to enhance the teaching and learning process, I think we have to start with the people we're working with.
Right.
So directly with faculty and then indirectly with our students. Well, from my perspective as a faculty educator now. And I think we need to start by listening. Well, first of all, we need to acknowledge, and I think some of us, most of us, are getting there, acknowledging that we are living in a period of, relearning. So we have learned, and we find ourselves throwing things out, unlearning, and we're in an era of relearning, and we acknowledge that AI is disruptive. And I think we need to ensure that we start looking at faculty, the people who have to engage with the students. And we have to acknowledge the fears and concerns and apprehensions that they have. So we start there. Get them to understand that this is not the end of the world. This is a tool, just like all the other tools we have had, but this is a tool that can do so much more. So this is a tool and when I talk about a tool, I'm talking about AI in general, not just generative AI. And so I think before we can start looking at harvest us, we need to start thinking about the kinds of guidelines, because this thing is waiting for us.
Right.
So we have to start thinking about the guidelines. So we have to make strategic plans. We have to remember that we want the students to be lifelong learners. What does that mean? We can't tell them, you can't use this, you can't use it this way, I'm not using it, if we're thinking of making them prepared for the world, for the next generation, for the future.
All right, thanks much. And you've mentioned the student, and I think I want to bring the students into this discussion. I'll jump right to Ms. Deans about your perspective from the other side of the desk, the student side.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. I think that when it comes to traditional language learning in the classroom, I think that we should really utilize these different tools that are coming out. Of course, I think AI is the perfect example of with great power comes great responsibility. It is capable of so much, and it's very hard to restrict, even for countries that are coming out with different laws to help and try and restrict different things, because AI can be very unethical in schools, in businesses, and I can understand why a lot of persons are very scared of it. Going back to reasoning why people can lose their jobs. For example, as Chris had mentioned, the glasses that are coming out, what happened to translators now? So in these types of situations where, okay, I'm a politician, I want to speak to another politician from a different country, I can just buy one of these glasses and now I don't need a professional translator to help me in the situation. But I also think that when it comes to AI, it actually isn't at the highest level it can be right now. Because language learning, or languages overall, are very different depending on the region. For example, the way we communicate in the West is very different from how they communicate in the East. The nuances and different ways that we speak and translate verbs or simply phrasing things are very different. And I think that AI hasn't reached that level to perfectly capture all these nuances. So I do agree that teachers are still going to be needed for language learning, because I think that human connection and knowing how to understand these different nuances need to be described, explained, and communicated with other persons. But I still think AI could be extremely useful in the classroom because, as Chris had mentioned once again, every student doesn't learn at the same pace, and every student is not going to learn from the same assessments. So I may be very bad at taking tests because I crumble under the pressure, but in the classroom I'm a lot more relaxed because I do like learning languages. I do like speaking in something that isn't my own, but in these test assessments, they're not really seeing that come out. So I think that in language learning in AI, it can really come out and give you a more personalized experience. So it can also help, as was mentioned before actually, it can also help with helping teachers create a more personalized curriculum towards students. And not only does it help with personalized curriculums, it can also help the student itself. So I can go home I can go conversate with ChatGPT, for example, in my target language, and I can get corrections in real time. I can be told, oh, this could be a much more natural way. So what I learned in school might be a little bit outdated. There might be a much more colloquial way of saying it. For example, a friend. It can put you in different situations. I can talk to a HR interviewer. I can speak to a customer service representative. And I might not be able to get all these different situations in a classroom setting. And I think that, for example, with ChatGPT, there's also a really popular application coming out right now called Language Talk, and that helps so much because it puts you all these different situations. It can help you with different varieties of grammars and variety of languages. And I just think that if we're able to utilize that in the classroom, then I think we can make much more progress in such a short amount of time.
Thanks much. Ms. Royal and Mr. Madden, I'm coming to you shortly. But before I get to you, I want to talk to Miss Douglas, sorry, about your perspective as a student in relation to foreign language learning and AI. You're a student of chemical engineering and you have to do Spanish because it's a bilingual program here at UTech Jamaica. Tell us a little bit about the role of AI in the foreign language learning process.
All right, so let me just say good afternoon to everyone here. And thank you, of course, for inviting me. It's an honor to be among you all. All right, so as a student of chemical engineering, of course, as you have heard, learning Spanish is compulsory. And it's one of my better modules. But of course, it has its challenges in terms of teaching and delivery, right? Students are more accustomed to learning stuff online. Persons are more drawn to learning things online. For example, it could be much more attractive because we have these apps like Duolingo. I think someone mentioned Duolingo. There's the emoticons that the app can have that can attract persons to it more. The little audio sounds that you hear and stuff like that that can attract them to learning stuff. But the limitations that I think the apps and AI overall has include the fact that we don't always get expressions translated correctly with different AI platforms. For example, I think it's better suited for building our vocabulary or, stuff along that line. But in terms of learning simple colloquial expressions, as someone mentioned earlier, that's not better communicated using these AI platforms. And personally, even if not looking at it from the university perspective, but high school, when I was learning Spanish at the high school level, yes, I liked to do my Google search and so forth, but it wasn't always accurate when we do our Google translations and stuff like that because we can get thrown off. For example, you can type the wrong thing in the search bar and Google gives you something different and then you think that, oh, this is the answer, when in reality, it's not. So even though AI has its place in the classroom, there is still the need for the teacher. There's still the need for that face-to-face interaction, that conversational tone that will allow the students to better learn and appreciate the language. So that's it from me for now.
All right, thanks much, Ms. Royal. I think you had mentioned that you had an interesting display for us in relation to this nexus between AI and language learning. You want to share? Sure. All right, I need to vacate the lectern.
Yes, just a bit, for just a bit. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Bonsoir. Or bonjour, buenas tardes, wagwan. Very well. So in language teaching, we know language is dynamic. And as some of the presenters before had said, we unlearn, relearn, and do things differently. I've also heard many of the panelists speak of things that, as I mentioned to Ramonia earlier, language learning is it should not only be telt, it should be felt. You know, And seeing and doing, it's two different things. So I have ChatGPT here. So some of the things that we were listening to, let's look at it. So from the teacher's perspective, a teacher, same foreign language teaching, and we're adapting for the next generation, correct? Great. So we go to ChatGPT and we do a prompt like, just a moment, please watch the screen. So we say, assume the role of a teacher, create a lesson plan for middle school, grade 9. All right, that says 8. All right, look at what generative AI is giving us. It gives you activities, your time, everything. Mind you, you won't need to use all of this. Look, adapt. Now, teachers, we know we're very busy. So something like this, it can help us. So it cuts down on the time. It may even give us, whoops, look, I'm sorry. It may even give us other ideas that we didn't think of that we could try. So this is from one perspective of a teacher, and I know I have 5 minutes. Let's look at it from the side of a student. By the way, there are other things, dear God, there are other things I could talk about, but in the interest of time, I'm moving quickly. So we say, hello, no. Hola, ChatGPT. Look at what ChatGPT gives us. Hola, ¿cómo puedo ayudarte hoy? It's saying, hi, how may I help you today? So, as a chat bot, or it can also be a tutor. So the students can put in these things, and it helps them. One of my teachers, or a teacher in my department, we did this course and he uses this in his class. So what he says he does, he gives the students an assignment. Let's say we're teaching commands. And he gives them as an assignment to go to ChatGPT, just like this, say, hola ChatGPT, give me some words that we can use or some commands in Spanish. And it promptly puts them right there for the students. So from the role of the teacher can use it to assist with lesson planning. From the role of the student can use it for vocabulary, can do assignment, and let's look at this also. So assume the role of an educator, create a multiple choice quiz on, say, greetings in Spanish. How is that? How is that? Fast. So, it not only does it gives you questions, so let's go right back up to the top. And again, this is from a teacher's perspective. Maybe I have ADHD too, I've just not been diagnosed, so I'm all over the place. What is the most common informal way to greet someone in Spanish? Look at these. So it gives you the option. So a teacher don't necessarily have to be slaving about creating the thing. Remember, nothing is really new under the sun. It's just other things we're doing in different ways. See, which of the following is a formal way to say hello in Spanish? Mr. Madden, you can help me on this and my other esteemed teachers of foreign languages. So we have the tools that can actually help us. Now, we mentioned Duolingo. Yes, it works. And Duolingo for a self-paced learner, that can also help because it gives you, yes, a time to say how long you want to practice and all of this. I take my leave. Thank you. I hope it has been helpful.
All right, thank you so very much for that demonstration. Mr. Madden, you want to jump in right there? And then we'll have some other questions.
Sure, thank you. Bonjour et bonsoir. I know there are people from France who are listening, so bonsoir, Leonie. I noticed you're online, so bonsoir. Right, there's so many things I could rebound on based on what my colleagues have said. Students use, both students and teachers can use ChatGPT as to give prompts to doing assignments as well. And I think one of the things, there are two things I'd like to point out at this point. They have been said earlier, but when it comes on to artificial intelligence in foreign language education, the notion of adaptability is very, very important. And I want to point to, permit me, je me permets en français, to cite one of my latest studies on, it has to do with intercultural communication. And I created what is called a conceptualized framework for global citizenship. Global meaning global and local citizenship. And because what I find is that there is a lack of these frameworks to guide our education process. So we tell our students that they're supposed to be, our education system prepares them to live globally, but that's more so from a content and certification perspective and not so much from an intercultural perspective. So in my conceptualized study, I said that there are three main competences that a global citizen must have. Must be multilingual or bilingual, must be adaptable, and must have ICT skills, which is what we're looking at today. And so both teachers and students need to be adaptable in this regard. We must embrace, and we've been doing this. In fact, the COVID-19 pandemic is a perfect example, perfect example. We had to go online immediately, and a lot of people did not know to use Zoom and Teams. You just had to, get with the groove at that time. And so AI or generative AI is really no different in this regard. And the role of the teacher is still important because, as you mentioned, when it comes on to machine learning and corpus learning, then you're going to find that AI really just gives you general information, but when it comes on to pragmatic information, when it comes on to cultural competence, then that's not something that AI will definitely give to you. So these are things that we have to take into account when it comes on to assessment as well. I think that's one of the key issues that we face when it comes on to artificial intelligence. And permit me to share, just yesterday, I had a practical experience. I gave my students their final written exam to do. And I warned them, and of course this because you're not supposed to cheat. But I said to them, guys, ensure that this is your own work. And by the time they started submitting it, I went to check if they followed the instructions. But to my surprise, the first response that I opened, it just raised a red flag or a red card, as the finance minister said, And because it was perfect, and this is a beginning level course. You cannot have perfect grammar at the beginning level. So it raised a red flag. So I messaged the student and I said to him, which source did you use to help you? And he tried to be, witty and diplomatic about it. And I said, listen, I've been teaching for years. Like, we know. So we have this to face. So it's a matter of being creative in our assessment, especially when we have to teach online, because when it's face-to-face, then, of course, in a lecture theater, they can't do that. But when you teach online, how do we create our assessment pieces so that it really brings out the student's own work as opposed to everything coming from AI? And the last point I will share before I give you back the floor is our policy, how do institutions treat with when students use these generative platforms? How do we grade them?
Thank you. You just wonderful. Still. All right. Still having the feedback? All right. Is this fine? Are you hearing me? Okay, there's no feedback now. Beautiful, thanks. All right, so a number of issues have come out, and I want us to focus on a few of them. And permit me, I'll go back to Mr. Madden, even though he spoke over time just now, but we'll go back to him shortly. So we're talking about policy, we're talking about ethics, we're talking about job security, the point that Dr. Latibode raised. The question of AI and student motivation, going back to something Mr. Record had said earlier too, in his presentation. How do we keep the student motivated if the student is going to have all of these tools available to him or her to go out there? The student doesn't care about your intercultural competence. The student cares only about the fact that AI can give me the minimum, which is optimal in the student's perception, to be able to communicate. How do you respond to that student? Oh, you need my mic, right?
I think it depends on the approach that the teacher takes in his or her class. My specialization is in computer mobile assisted language learning. So every chance I get, I use technology in my classroom. And so I'm very big on gamification. And so it's a matter of being deliberate. Now, one of the things I practice as an educator is that I build my own content because I know specifically what I want my students to cover. And cultural competence, intercultural competence is not something that is given much attention. It means that the teacher has to deliberately, if you want to make a point about cities in France, you're going to put in your paragraph that you're teaching, okay, nous allons à Lyon. We're going to Lyon. So by the time the student sees that, the students will be like, and the truth is that some of them know. In fact, in my current class, the males that I teach, a lot of them were able to tell me about the cities in France because they watch football. And so they come with the class with prior knowledge, and you are able to build on that. So I think it's about being deliberate about what you want them to cover, and then you're able to get them, you're able to bring across more of that. So I think that's very important.
All right, audience, is that convincing? While you think about that, I'll go to Mr. Record. Thanks, Mr. Madden. The question of ethics, that's one of the big questions that is hanging over this era in relation to AI and learning, not just about foreign language education. Is this an insurmountable question? Are we going to be able to deal with this matter of ethics?
Deal with. Mic 5, please. Check 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. When I say deal with this matter of ethics, so the National AI Task Force was recently formed, and as part of our objective is to make recommendations to the government around a sort of an AI policy. Right? So we're not doing the policy. We are doing some analysis of the market, use of AI, and making recommendations. Putting on my PSOJ hat, I'm the chair of the Innovation and Digital Transformation Committee for the PSOJ. Our Corporate Governance Committee recently came to us with the very same question around ethics and around some sort of a guidelines for our members, right? Corporate Jamaica, small, medium-sized Jamaica. And we formed a subcommittee, a merger of the corporate governance and innovation, digital transformation, to come up with some ideas. Of course, we're going to use the tools. So similar to what was demonstrated a while ago, various people, whether they use Anthropic, whether it's Claude, whether it's Bard or Gemini, or GPT-4. Everyone came up with different things, and then we kind of merged. Yes, and ethics came up over and over and over and over again as to the recommendation. So we have put together recommended, it's a short four-page guidance, PSOG will soon release it, of recommendations for corporate use of AI. And of course, one of them has to be, explainability. And then of course, one of them has to be just some openness and honesty around, are you using or how are you using any form of AI in doing this? Now remember, as I said, AI is 70 plus years old. So we've been using AI for a very, very long time and not having to explain anything to anybody. Because, in one of my daughter's room, she has a device sitting there, and I tell a story of walking into the room once and just having a discussion with her and checking up one of her work, and I said, 125 multiplied by 30. And she just said, just turn and say, Siri, 125 multiplied by 30. Boom. And I stood there and I'm like, okay, all right, things have changed. How do we adjust this now with our new reality? The fact that for them it's just easy, for them it's second nature, for them they don't think about it, right? Now, so the ethical use of AI, I don't want to jump and say insurmountable, but some of us going to have to realize that that person handing in that homework, they may be honest and open to admit, and then there's going to be a whole set that's not going to be honest and open. I was on a board meeting recently. I read a report, and when I read the report, I'm reading this report, and I'm like, I'm a heavy user of AI from even before this came out. And I just said, dude, you didn't write this. I said, this is coming straight out of a, and the person admitted, and I said, no, we need some soul. We need you. I need to hear your voice. You need to come up with a framework, but add in some things that you are saying. So, we can get the personality in there. So we have a challenge. We have a real challenge.
We have a big challenge.
I'll just admit it. No,
yes.
No, I just want to just jump back onto another point quickly. As I was here, I'm on these various WhatsApp groups that are heavily AI discussions going on. And of course, yesterday, Amazon announced that several hundred workers will not be rehired at the end of their contractual period. They use the nice words. Nobody not saying nobody firing anybody, but they just won't be rehired. Deep down in the article, the researchers, they quoted a site called layoffs.fyi, something you can check out. Within the last year, 220 companies have laid off or fired 57,000 workers as a result of replacing processes that those people were handling with AI.
I think you've jumped the gun and you've
jumped the gun. Sorry.
Questions.
Sorry.
All right. Since you're there, finish talking about the
I was just saying
of job security and AI. Then finish that.
So what I'm saying here, folks, is, and all of us, any of us studying AI over the last year who have read it, it's not that the AI is going to replace your job, but someone else who's using AI really well and understand it will replace your job. Eventually, we talk about the robotics and the automation and all of that. When you go deep in an organization and try to figure out what can I replace, what you come to realize very quickly is that each of our jobs are a set of processes. So it's highly unlikely that we're going to find any AI. Today, it will happen tomorrow, but today, that's going to be able to do all the processes of our job. So what the analysis now is, the recommended analysis for consultants like me is, all right, let's look to see all the things that you do in your week, which one of these things can we replace and automate, And then now we start to retweak your job. So I'm just suggesting that we'd have to be throwing out the people, but how do we retool the people?
All right, thanks. Mrs. Smith-Hamilton, put on your ministry hat, please. and let's talk policy. Not just Spanish, no, because we know that that's a chair you sit in at the ministry, but foreign languages generally, and perhaps even broader than that, language education. What are the policy steps, given all of this framework that Mr. Record has outlined? What are the policy framework steps the ministry is contemplating at the moment, or will be contemplating in regard to dealing with AI?
Okay, thank you for that question. At the moment, the ICT policy speaks heavily about ethics, the legal and the ethical considerations for using ICT tools. And by ICT tools, it is any emerging tool inclusive of AI and others. And just a second, please.
All right, while we're doing that, Ms. Royal, all right, continue,
right.
Mrs. Smith-Hamilton.
Right, so while we are thinking about those policy guidelines for ethics, the Ministry of Education recognizes the importance of the ethical and legal considerations, legal use of ICT tools. And some of these ethical considerations include data privacy and equity. And so within the context of character education and even digital citizenship, the ICT policy promotes responsible use of AI tools, and it considers core values of authenticity, credibility, fairness, and also social responsibility. And so through the national standards curriculum and through all the other thrusts towards transforming education, we promote this type of use of AI. Users of AI should be respectful, and they should also be mindful of cultural differences and diversity, as had been explained by Mr. Madden. We should also therefore understand the limitations also for some of the AI algorithms. And so as educators, through the policy, we enforce, or we encourage, or we recommend that we apply intellectual rigor as we use AIs to evaluate the content, and even through foreign language education to not cause any form of offense or biases in using AI for certain topics related to culture. And we also promote student welfare through the policy, and we also want to use AI to mitigate against bias and discrimination and to make sure that we uphold ethical standards. ICT policy also in education considers existing legislations, for example, the Data Protection Act, and this provides legal frameworks and regulations that may affect the use of AI. So we want to consider the fact that we are guided by these guidelines, and these policies are already in place, and they have to be enforced at the institutional level, of course, as well when you deal with institutions, at all levels of the institution, and it will trickle down to the everyday mundane, well, not mundane, routine tasks that we do with our students. So we have to be guided by those. In reflection of the ethical issues presented, there are two fundamental principles that, from a policy perspective, and also within the framework of policy from an ethical perspective, we want to underscore that technology is here for everyone. It is an augmenting tool, which means that we have to bring our expertise to the table. It augments what we have. And so we are in the driver's seat. We should not be controlled by technology. We should control technology. And that's the first fundamental principle. The other one has to do with prioritizing the perennial or the eternal over the temporal. And what this suggests is that temporally, we want answers. We want lesson plan ideas. We want activities for our students. We want responses to our research papers, etc. That's what we want now. And so we have to be guided by the fact that we cannot substitute temporal gratification for things that last forever or things that are perennial, like integrity, like credibility. And so these have lasting effects and significance. So we want to be guided by those as well when it comes to the ethical considerations. I hope I didn't go over time.
Yes, but thanks. I think we're going to lose one of our panelists, Ms. Deans. Is Ms. Deans the one who has to leave? No. Ms. Douglas, all right. Apologies, but she has an event that she has to attend immediately. Thank you so very much for being on the panel. All right, so you've said a lot, Mrs. Smith Hamilton, and I leave it to the audience to assess whether the robustness of what was just mentioned. But I want to go to Ms. Royal, drill that down now to the staff room and the classroom. All of what Mrs. Smith Hamilton said. The teacher who, salaries have been increased recently, we understand that, but the teacher who needs to go to the second hustle, again, the temporal versus the perennial, the student who has 10 assignments due and is rushing to get those assignments done, and the temporal is what is given priority. How will all of that trickle down? Now, going back to the same question that Mr. Madden was asked, how does all of that trickle down now to ensure that we're using this thing wisely? Let's not use the word ethically, but wisely.
All right, so I like your choice of word, wisely. Now, as I think all the panelists would have hinted at it, you see, using AI right now, it's not the be-all and end-all of everything. So the human element is still necessary, as well as integrity. So we don't use it to pass off something as our own. It should be a tool, something to assist us to do better at what we need to do. So in that regard, and from the perspective of, say, Arden High School, we do have training, and we're told, you don't use this, or assist our students not to use it just to cheat, but allow them to use it in a responsible way. So that is how you would give them the assignment and say, use it to do this. Then they come back to the class and they report on their findings. You could also say to them, okay, use your findings to create a game, which they will all learn from. So it is in those ways that we use it. And Mrs. Smith Hamilton touched on something else about the data policy, those data protection acts. That too, we have to bear all these things in mind because nothing is isolated. So yes, we do have these things. We have training. We talk to the students as well about being, we say not ethical, but being honest and using AI as a tool to help us to do better what we need to do, not using it to, say, get us ahead without having no other responsibility in how we use it.
All right, thanks for that. Mrs. Stuart McIntosh, Stuart McCoy. I don't know where I got McIntosh from. I see the wheels turning in your head as all the previous answers were given. Are we seeing a new kind of paradigm? And by that, I don't mean simply that something has changed. What I mean is the very concept of ethics, for instance, the very concept of assessment, the very concept of the curriculum, all of those things now have to be reconsidered. Is that where we're at? Because I don't think a lot of these answers suffice. We're still in the paradigm of we want people to be honest and so on. But no, the student who is on the timeline is going to use AI to give me an essay and then copy that essay. Another one is going to copy that same essay and give it to me as well. Right? So, yes, Mrs. Stuart McCoy.
Yes.
I got it right this time.
Apart from marrying me off to my daughter, I actually... that's where it came from, probably.
Yes, yes.
Yes, indeed. I think that we are in a new era. So I started off by making mention to Toffler's saying, you know, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And yes, that is where we are. We find ourselves in a new period, something that's a little bit scary, but it's exciting at the same time. And so, yes, while the comments were coming in, my mind was going on. And so I think there are several things that we have to reconsider. Yes, we have policies that exist. We have policies that speak to the ICT aspect. But given the nature of the disruption of generative AI, because Chris says AI has been in for over 70 years, the generative aspect makes everything so chaotic. And so we find ourselves, I'm going to use an expression, at the edge of chaos. And there is the European framework for digital competencies for educators. They called it the DigiEducomp. I hate that word. So the framework speaks to how can we look at the different elements, the principles that guide the digital competence of educators. And it was recently updated to include a whole section on AI competencies. I think the same is required of us when we have the discussions regarding our policies. We have to look at the ICT policy, the Data Act policy, and look and admit to ourselves that it probably needs a revisiting and adjusting that takes into consideration the AI, the generative AI aspect of it. So that's something that I think is important. The other thing is that Ramona mentioned the effect, the top-down effect. I think the time has come for us to start from the bottom up. You know, we have several versions, pull the best from it and submit that. Is that cheating? So we have to start thinking about all of these things, and these things
and who is monitoring?
Exactly.
Who can monitor?
Exactly.
You know?
So these are some of the things we have to consider, and it requires new thinking, new conceptualization. We are in a new paradigm.
Wonderful. And I think at this juncture, I might have to close the panel, but I have one last question for everyone. We haven't had any questions from the online audience as yet, so I think we might close out with this. And I think, given what Mrs. Stuart McCoy has said, this question will resonate with her. AI, and going back to foreign language education, AI in foreign language education, is it disruptive? Is it an enhancer? Or is it both? And I'll begin with you, Mr. Madden.
I think it's both, but in foreign language education, we've always been at the forefront when it comes on to artificial intelligence. In fact, I was reading a research paper that suggests that Kali is in my head because that's my discipline. But computer-assisted language learning, computer-mediated communication, all of these things, you'll find that a lot of technology surrounds that relates to foreign language education. And so we've always been at the forefront pioneering these things. So I feel like even though it is some sort of disruptive, that's my phone. Yes, but I think it's both, but I think the nature of foreign language teachers is that we are open-minded people, and so we tend to embrace. And so I know that based on my own context, I operate both in the Caribbean and in Europe for the most part, since I do my studies there. And so I know that my colleagues in the European space, they are, looking at things. Of course, I would hope that in our context in the Caribbean, we try to catch up with what they're doing. But I think for the most part, we have a positive mindset outside of Europe looking at what benefits AI can bring to foreign language education.
Thanks, Ms. Royal. AI in foreign languages, disruptive, an enhancer, or both?
All right. I don't have to think about it a lot. It is both, and chances are more. Because, let's look at it. Chaos can be good. Disruption can be good, because it brings new thinking, new ideas, new ways of doing things. And as we have been survivors of COVID, we have all had to pivot, unlearn, relearn, things I didn't know I could have even, things I didn't even think about. I'm now doing them.
Yes.
So we all have to do these things, or students too, and they're early adopters. But it's both and more, and I think we can really do this. Keep the human element, keep our integrity, and let's get on with it.
Thanks, Mrs. Smith-Hamilton.
Thank you. I could easily say ditto, but I'm not allowed to.
No, you're not.
Well, I said ditto with two more things. I totally endorse the sentiments of Antoinette. It's both and it's more. The disruptor aspect of it would have been, all of these ethical considerations and ethical challenges that we're talking about, and also the lack of preparedness of our system or our educators to deal with AI. But there are steps that we're taking. As a country, as a ministry, as a body of educators, we are taking steps. We have embraced the technology, and we are building the capacity of our teachers and of our students too. I mean, in our curriculum, for example, we have ICT attainment targets. These are translated into our activities, into our teaching and learning assessments, and they guide that as well. And big on this is digital citizenship. A big aspect of it is that. So we are embracing it. The other thing is, and I remember what Michelle was saying about, how we have to now look at what is cheating, etc. But we still have to be guided by boundaries. So even as we evolve and even as the face of education evolves, we still have to be guided by ethical boundaries. We need boundaries. And within the teaching and learning of foreign languages, assessment in general, our students are accessing the tools. Let us encourage them to use it with intellectual rigor. Let us use it as an opportunity to build their critical thinking skills as they evaluate the content that AI is, for example, is generating. Let us also revolutionize how we assess our students to using more competency-based real-time approaches, especially when we treat with the linguistic skills. And so if a student turns something in, no pun intended, if a student turns something in, we would want for that student to analyze what he or she has turned in for us, for the class. They can do it collaboratively. There are a lot of activities and strategies that we can use to capitalize on these tools.
Thanks. Ms. Dean?
All right, I'd like to actually tackle this question from more of a student perspective. And I think when students start using these programs to help them with their work, it's not only because I'm running out of time, I need to get this essay out quickly. I think it's also because maybe in the classroom setting, the way the content is delivered or the way a teacher is teaching doesn't really appeal to me, and in the end, I start to lose interest in the subject itself. So if AI can help revolutionize teaching in the classroom, maybe that will actually help me be more interested in the content itself, and maybe I'll actually use AI and say, okay, let me see how I can use this to help me get farther in this subject. If I want to hey, get more ideas of how I can approach this assignment and say, okay, I can use it for conversation practice, I can use it for more grammar practice, I can get different words, I can learn from this, then I think it actually be a great enhancer. For in the disrupting the actual learning process, of course it exists, but I think if we can get students more interested in the content itself, I don't think that would be an issue we'd have to worry about anymore.
All right, thanks much. Mr. Record? All right, you're scratching the hair or the head?
No.
Which one?
I'm trying to figure out which one of the things that I was going to start saying should I use first.
Yes.
So I had written something down for another presentation that I had this morning in Trelawney, and I said I'm going to just take a paragraph from it. So reflecting on my journey as I transitioned from the chalkboard to the boardroom.
Okay.
Right? I've witnessed firsthand the transformative power of technology. Right? It has reshaped industries, economies, societies. Its most profound impact is the realm of education. Right? Where it has the power to bridge gaps, ignite curiosity, unlock boundless potential of our student minds. However, the digital revolution brings to light a stark divide, the chasm between those who have access to digital resources. Because when I talk about accessibility, all the conversation here so far is assuming that everybody have access. All right, good. But who has access to digital resources and skills and those who don't. As educators and leaders, we are tasked with a critical mission to navigate this divide and ensure that no child, no teacher, and no community is left behind in our journey towards a digital future. Now, I will quote something that just popped in my mind as I heard the various answers. And this was written in November 1859. Anybody know where I'm going? And when I read it, you need to tell me who the author is, right? All right? Oh, come on. Why is my AI not recognizing my face now? No. Never went to no ChatGPT. I knew exactly what I wanted to be. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was a season of light. It was a season of darkness. It was a spring of hope. It was a winter of despair. That was written in 1859. Okay? Who wrote it? Charles Dickens. All right.
All right.
So I can ditto, yes?
No.
All right. So the question is AI in education, in foreign language education, a disruption or an enhancer? I believe...
Or both.
Or both. I believe it can be one and one thing only. It is a disruptive enhancer. It is something that has forced us to look at academic honesty within ourselves as facilitators, faculty, and with our students. It is something that, based on the tale of two cities, it is something that presents to us something that's dark and frightening, but something that's also enlightening. It has so much potential, but it also has so many challenges. So yes, I believe that AI in education, foreign language education, can be one and one thing only, a disruptive enhancer.
All right. Thank you so very much, Mrs. Stewart McCoy. Audience, could you give them a big hand for me? So in wrapping this, we're left with perhaps more questions than answers. The question of access raised by Mr. Record is extremely important, didn't come up much in this discussion. The lack of preparation of our education system for this disruption. Both Mrs. Smith-Hamilton and Stewart McCoy have raised that. Ms. Deans, the question of the competition between teachers and the students of this age and the technology of this age. How do I compete against the short videos? How do I compete against the TikTok videos that they're seeing and so on in my class? Is it that because I'm not able to compete, then they all go create a podcast using AI because I didn't teach? Those are important questions being thrown at me clearly, but not me personally, but at us as educators. But is that what we are experiencing in this disruptive enhancement that's taking place with AI? The language professions, it's a question that I was hoping that we would have delved into a little more deeply, but that's at the heart of this discussion, the fact that people are able to translate all the time, interpret all the time using AI. What does that mean for our professions, those of us who are in translation and interpreting? It's an important question because foreign language education leads ultimately to these professions. And if people are not able to get jobs at the end of the line, then the pipeline doesn't begin. Those are some of the questions that I think we have to begin to mull over as language professionals in relation to this. And my final point, we've been here before in a different kind of way. And it's something that I've always said, and I don't know if you remember, 10 years ago actually, Dr. Vice Dean, Acting Dean, and I remember the reaction in the LT9 at the time when I made a presentation about the fact that language and communication tools are epoch dependent. So Martin Luther and the printing press at the time determined an entire set of epochs. So nations were formed from the printing press. The Reformation took place from the printing press. The Renaissance gained steam and power from the printing press. Dictionaries, all the books that we use to teach language came from the printing press. That was an epoch. It would seem, and I'm on a soapbox now, but I'll come down shortly, it would seem that with AI, we're in a completely different epoch. And that epoch has not yet been defined. The epochs don't define themselves, they define themselves retrospectively. So we will be able to define what this disruption is ultimately at some point, but in the very distant future. It's important though for us, because we have that history, to be able to look at what is happening and think through and say, there are opportunities in this disruption that we need to pay attention to. And those of us who are language educators, those of us who are at universities like this, and in institutions like the ministry and in the new committee or task force that was created, need to look and say, there is some framework that can guide us as to how we can engage this due process. I thank you very much. I'm off my soapbox. Omari? Oh, right. Okay. Sorry. Questions? That's what I was asking you. Yes, that's what I was asking you. Yes. All right. And I thought you had said no. My apologies. I thought she had said no when I asked her. Yes. So, are there questions? Okay. Let's go. The microphone. Is it working now? All right. So let's run. My apologies again. I completely misunderstood you.
It's because we were speaking with our hands.
Okay.
That's
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much again, panelists. It was very interesting. Just a little history for this discussion. The discussion was triggered by a discussion with my previous head of school, Dr. Jones Mackenzie, about the future of foreign language education. And the fact that more and more it seems as if partners we used to have, for example, faculties that used to insist that their students do a foreign language, are taking it out of their curriculum, all right? I'm not sure what it looks like at the secondary level, but the number of French classes we used to have, we no longer have the number of Spanish classes. What is the future of foreign language education in light of what is happening? Because some persons are saying, well, now with AI and students can just go to AI, we won't have foreign language, what exactly is the future of foreign language education in the current dispensation?
If I may start, very, very critical question, and Ramona knows, as I served as, I'm the former president of the Jamaica Association of French Teachers, and I believe over the Spanish side we have the same problem in terms of, you know, finding teachers, because one, a number of our colleagues have, you know, gone overseas to work, and outside of that, a number of them have left the profession completely. So we have that to deal with. And globally too, and if you follow the news in the UK, you'll find that a number of universities have cut their foreign language programs. And it's something that bothers me, because those people who are outside of our discipline feel as though we just come to work and teach, you know, grammar and that's it. And I'm like, foreign language is way more than that. And again, it comes back to the primary competences that we need to develop as global citizens. And we have to look at how foreign language bridges the gap in terms of cross-cultural communication if we're going to prepare our students to work internationally. I'm very big on intercultural communicative competence, and I feel like one of the best ways to develop, though, to cultivate and to demonstrate those competences is via foreign language education. So I think whilst, and I think this is a part of our advocacy in terms of putting to our heads of schools that to say, listen, we need to keep foreign language education, because it's not just about learning a language and stuff. There are other competences that are built through foreign language education.
If I may, I just want to endorse what O'Neill has said and elaborate. It is somewhat ironic that as we progress in a digital era, in a globe, and as we progress in a globalized or localized world where that has become so small, it's very ironic that we are seeing this decline in, accessing or students actually doing foreign languages. But it speaks to just, for using basic terms, a lack of knowledge and appreciation for the value of foreign languages. It is not merely content. It teaches tolerance. It builds critical thinking skills. It allows you to develop as an individual in terms of cognitively. It gives you a competitive edge. It still does give us as foreign language students as a competitive edge among our peers. It is extremely important. We have designed Spanish curriculum or curricula from the primary level, and also we are now looking into developing a formal curriculum for the kindergarten level. It is extremely important. And so I will use this platform to encourage our parents, our administrators to embrace the change that we have on us now, and to embrace the fundamental role that foreign languages play in this endeavor.
Let me throw in a opposite view.
Go right.
Short story. This week, sitting with a group of friends, someone brings up an Instagram video, and the video is going on, and they're looking at it and said, "This looks interesting, but I don't understand what a nice, fantastic picture, but it was in a different language." And they're looking, and I'm like, "Boy, I don't know what this is saying." So I said, "Press the translate button." And they're, "What do you mean?" I said, "See a button that's a translate?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Press it." And they're like, "Oh my God, it just translates in English." I'm saying that to say that in many of the seats that I sit in, I have to understand that there's a different world in public sector, there's a different world in private sector, there's a different world in academia, right? And then there is a massive world in consumerism globally, right? Massive. So when the solution is made ridiculously simple, that you just press a button and your immediate problem is solved. I don't need to go seek out a translator. I don't need to go seek out anybody. I just press a button and I get my answer. I'm done. I'm looking for some fine wine, and I just press a button and I speak into my language, and it puts it in another person's language. My problem, my immediate problem is now solved. Is there a place for language education? Yes, but I think it's going to get more nuanced and narrow as these technologies are amplified globally. So that's my...
And I want to jump on that as well. The question is asked, with everything that's happening, what is the future of foreign language education? I think we need to, in addition, acknowledge the heavy consumerism. We also need to recognize that despite our knowledge and being at the forefront, when we think about adopters, we only have a small percentage of innovators and early adopters. And so we still have, to a large extent, laggards and late majorities and so forth. We have to think about how are we going to use the technology that exists, the AI that exists, to bring the students back, to bring the teachers back. I have heard conversations where people say, who, me? Me not go on TikTok because me don't have... No, I think we need to start opening the mind, new paradigm, new conceptualization, unlearning, relearning. We have to think of how do we use these tools that are coming in, these disruptive enhancers, to bring back our students in, make the classroom fun. Somebody mentioned gamification. How do we use these things to bring our students back? How do we use the technology, use the translators, use the simple pressing of a button, integrate it into the teaching and learning for foreign languages, and bring our students back? How do we do that? I think that is a question that we also need to think about.
All right, thanks. The next question.
Good afternoon. Listening to Mrs. Hamilton, I am seeing some issues coming out. She spoke about the ICT policy, and I remember my time studying here, the ministry mandated that ICT 1 and 2 must replace IT. And so while we were taught about ICT and its tools, we were never taught about these policies. So how then were we to be guided? Now that I am on the other side doing my postgraduate studies, some of my classmates submitted their assignments only to be marked down for breaching the AI policy, which we were not told there was such a policy. So how then do you mark down your students for something perceived to be existed, but were never taught? And so my question is there a need to inform our educators or / our students about these policies? And I think Mrs. McCoy touched on the other part of my question. Is there a need to teach AI?
Who wants to take a stab at that? Mrs. Smith-Hamilton, he targeted you.
Well, yes, so I will begin. So what you have said highlights the importance of transparency and of providing adequate information for our public. Now, I just want to make it clear that our ICT policy is accessible. ICT in education policy is accessible, it is readily available online, it is for public consumption. The Ministry of Education would have also done adequate sharing of information regarding this policy at this time. Now, I am not sure, when you spoke about even an AI policy, I am not sure if you are referring to the institutional policy, as in the policy of the institution of which you were a part as a student. Because what the Ministry of Education promotes or requires or advocates is for institutions, educational institutions, to have established policies, their own established policies to treat with the use of ICT technology or ICT tools. And they are to establish these policies, of course, within the framework of the general ICT in education policy. And so you will find that one institution will have a policy, will have policy directives which differ from another institution. And so a penalty, for example, at a teacher's college, might differ from a teacher's college to the next, or because I'm aware that the Teachers College of Jamaica now has their own policies in place, but you'll still find that between institutions, the policies vary or the regulations vary. So what the ICT in education policy does for a country is that it provides that framework from which institutional internal policies can be developed.
All right, thanks. I think if it can be very brief, because we've gone way beyond our time.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I recently did a presentation down at MICO, it's another teachers' college. My presentation title was entitled "From Disruption to Opportunity: Adapting to the Changing Nature of the Workplace." And in that discussion, MICO, that very moment, announced that their own AI policy. They shared a copy with us, we read it, and it was pretty comprehensive, not overly complex, because it's one of the challenges. Sometimes we really dig too deep. So my question to, oh, she went outside. Okay, where did she disappear? Oh, there she is, yes. Does your organization, your department, do you have an AI use case policy that the college, that the university has and the various colleges have, or is it something that people do on their own in their own schools? Does it exist?
All right. Thank you very much again, and apologies, Dr. Telfer, for the miscommunication. I'll now hand over to Mr. Wilson to complete the program. Thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience.
The answer is no.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis, and our esteemed panelists. Put your hands together one more time for them. So it was indeed an insightful conversation on AI in education. I want to thank Dr. Lewis for spearheading this discussion and our esteemed panelists again. But to formally thank you all, I now invite Mrs. Maria Barrett, a lecturer from the Language Teaching and Research Center, to do the vote of thanks.
Distinguished panelists, esteemed faculty members, fellow students, and honored guests. On behalf of the organizing committee, it is with immense gratitude that I extend my heartfelt thanks to all panelists for their invaluable insights and expertise shared during our discussion on AI and education, particularly foreign languages today. Your contributions have not only enlightened us, but have also sparked meaningful conversations that will undoubtedly shape the future of education. I also want to extend our gratitude to the faculty members, the acting dean for FELS, Dr. Harold McDermott, our head of school, Dr. Warwick Latibadier, our director of LTRC, Dr. Deidre Telfer, and the master of ceremonies here with us today, Mr. Omar Wilson, a student from BA CAT, and our lovely moderator, Dr. Ram Lewis. Also, the fellow panel members, Mr. Christopher Record, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. Mr. O'Neill Madden, Mrs. Michelle Stewart McCoy, Mrs. Ramonia Smith Hamilton, thank you so much. Miss Antoinette Royal, Miss Ashana Douglas, and Miss Ashley Deans. Your contributions were truly and heartfelt accepted. Thank you all, our participants as well, those who are on site and online, for joining us on this lovely evening. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mrs. Barrett. Our discussion on artificial intelligence in foreign language education, adapting for the next generation, has been both enlightening and thought-provoking. We've explored the potential of AI to revolutionize language learning, from personalized tutoring to immersive experiences. As we navigate this ever-evolving landscape, let's continue to collaborate, innovate, and ensure that AI enhances rather than replace. As was mentioned, there are certain facets of life that AI cannot fill, especially when it comes on to the human interaction. It was a pleasure serving in the capacity of Master of Ceremony. I am Omari Wilson. As I close, I want to remind you all that AI can make you and it can also break you. Use it wisely. Join us next year for another insightful and productive conversation on issues in language. Thank you. Good evening.